affect you.
Calvin T. Mann, leading Emmy, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to Emmy TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Good afternoon, high noon, 4 o'clock. Yes, wanted to make sure we get it in today. Good day. Heather.
Thank you. Good day to you.
Right, and good day, El Boogo.
I'm here.
So,
Good afternoon.
So I wanted to get into the part 3, right? Because here we are having these conversations, and we're talking about the disorders, and it's just amazing how yesterday here's another disorder that disrupted the neighborhoods. And so, not to get really knee deep into that conversation for that, but I wanted to touch on it because I have this theory, and the theory is supported in a ways by a number of people in the medical field, but because we see it as entertainment, we don't see it that way. You know, just like with gambling, they have gambling addiction hotlines, right? Well, gamblers, gamblers have killed. My man shot up 50. He was at a gambling facility when he shot and killed 50 people in Las Vegas. So we looked at video games. I've been talking about video games for a long time, right? And just seeing the mimicking in our youth and boys, and with the driving the cars fast and reckless, and the very high gun usage. You can walk in any neighborhood, and young boys, they all got guns. They just showed some young guys break into a house and took out the house 9 guns. So of course they knew that there was 9 guns in the house. So it's somebody they knew, right? And then yesterday occurs. And when yesterday occurred, it was just not surprising at all to me. I didn't even blink an eye, because I've been saying it's not gonna get better. You have a ton of broken males, boys, tons and tons of them, indoctrinated in violence. And where can they get violence? They say it's something like, the average kid sees something like 44,000 images of violence, if not more, a day. we come on here. I'm talking about youth, right? And we're talking about boys. Why? Well, why? Why did we talk about boys, Heather? Why are we talking about males? Why are we talking about the restoration of family? There's nothing wrong. We're not violent. We're not. People are not getting murdered for nothing. Why would that happen? What gave him the confidence to walk out the house and randomly walk down the street shooting people? That's normal. Or is that taught behavior? Right? Because we like to, we got this whole speculation, right? That this is normal. This was, we got 100 excuses, right? We acting like they. When it's funny to watch this too. So I'm just gonna say this. When I say we acting like they, whenever there's a crime against a cop against a black male or female, white culture, a lot of the white culture come up with, oh, they should have did this, or he shouldn't have been that, or his background. We like to bring up people's background, his background, right? And then what we look at, because that's what it is. When you flip it over and you see a mass shooting by a black kid, it's right. I'm wondering what made him go there. So we acting like they. Oh, he really needed such and such and such. The problem is we and they is the problem. See, it's both of y'all. It's all y'all. All y'all are causing harm to these boys. All y'all, right? These boys need fathering. A lot more on hands fathering. You have we did way too much of the pimp praising and all that stuff. Anyway, the young man was apprehended without dying at the hands of the police. And so he has 4 or 5 murder cases on his hands, right? It's 4 or 5. I'm not quite sure. A lot of families were affected, so it's 4 plus his family, right? So it's 5. A lot of the families were affected, right? So just think about this now. His disruption, because of his disorder, his disruption interrupted all these other families. And because of what he has done, he has impacted those other families, including his. We are in the state of reaping, and no one really wants to stop it, in my opinion. Now, I know my opinion doesn't have a whole lot of weight. We don't have 1 million viewers, we don't have the hecklers, right? Because we're talking solutions. And I say that wholeheartedly, but I what I want to do is really get into part 3 of the disorders. And really, the first one was we needed to get the fathers. The second one, we needed to do a better job with putting our family first. But this third one, we must address mothering. And so that's what we're going to get into, how the mothering perspective, as my son would say, it's called smothering. A smothering mother, right? And so that is a completely different thing, because I wish I could get him more so he could talk about it, because that's his brainchild is about unsmother, right? Because that's what is happening to our boys, right? And so families, we got to do a better job. But like I said, we talked about the fathers first. Now we got to enhance and get mothers on board and locked in with dad, so we can, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Heather, how was your day, and what would you like to say?
I have been engaged most of the day in my mothering activity, in my mothering role, trying to make sure that I am separating my mother and my smother. That's the short end of it. But it's been a good day. I am working with my son around getting counseling and counseling for feeling torn between his mom and his dad, and how we think his environment, what we consider safe environment. So I'm speaking from experience today, but I'm also speaking from some really, really important statistics that we need to make sure that we're understanding the dynamic that causes a lot of our disorder. I just want to throw out a few things, a few of the stats that I reflect on quite often, so I keep them with me. So one major stat that I think is important is that this was some from the census in 2018, and it says Black women are the head of 27% of all Black households, and that is Black women who are unmarried. The stat for all women is 12%. 12% of all women. And so when you look at the distance between what's happening with us as Black women and what's happening with women across the country, it's twice the number. Why is that? I think we're going to talk a little bit about that level of the disorder. Another piece that I think is really important is that it said only 37% of Black women who gave birth in that year were married. So what is that saying? That's saying that the other mothers in that time were without the fathers. They had to go through that process alone. That's a lot of women.
That's a lot of women.
And then the other piece that I want to just talk about and touch on, which is a part of another part of our disorder that I think we really need to focus in on as women and young women, and being able to make sure that this system and this process can be broken. That women in Michigan have at least documented 26,000 abortions a year. We're talking about the disorder that causes disruptions. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to define that, because I think those three things that I just mentioned, the number of Black female-headed households, the number of married women giving birth to our children, and then the number of abortions that are taking place amongst us in Michigan. So the numbers are really staggering. So when you start to scale that number down, not just to the state of Michigan, but when you start looking at Detroit, those numbers, I mean, they are staggering numbers, staggering. And what are we doing about that? So one of the things that I believe it boils down to is, what are our core values? What do we believe? And just to cite another interesting fact, it says that 87% of all Black people are affiliated with a religion. And so if 87% of Black people are affiliated with a religion, which is supposed to be the foundation of our values, that means that there's so much more that should be valued in the process. So we know marriage is not high on that priority list. Children outside of marriage is not high on that priority list. That means that our value of the children that we are entrusted to, those lives that we are entrusted to, 26,000 of them in Michigan alone. And the numbers tend to flex. They haven't been getting lower. They've been getting higher. And so what are the choices that we're making if we have just a religious affiliation? If we have some foundation, then how and where are we applying that? if we were truly applying what we believed, if we were truly applying our core values, could this level of disorder be this far out of control? So that means to me that the first thing that we need to do is go back to our core values, the reasons why we do or don't do what we do and don't do. And so, and I'm going to tie this into what we've been defining over these last sessions. I'm going to go back to 4 things. The first one is acceptable culture and how we define acceptable culture. And so it's basically the behaviors and the norms that are established in the home and are also a part of you growing up in those norms and behaviors, and then it becomes acceptable behavior in the household. It spills out into the areas where you work, you play, you gather, you learn. It spills off into your environment, and it goes also unchallenged and then becomes acceptable because the number of people who share the same values begin to increase, and they start to gather together, and then they become part of a system or dynamic that leads to certain values and core values. The second one is how we define a family. So we're using this definition as defined by 2 parents and their children living together as a unit. Just a simple definition. We know that we have a lot of structure and defining and how we define families. But for the purposes of looking at this through solutions, the first thing it says is 2 parents. 2 parents. The second thing it says, and their children. The third thing it says is living together. And the fourth thing it talks about as a unit. That means unified. That means unity. So the next one that I want to talk about is called the law of recency. The law of recency, and I know when you hear it, it's going to trigger so many of our own thoughts because every time I think about it, I have these thoughts that emerge. The law of recency is basically the present facts or situations or the circumstances that are present in your mind versus those things that have been part of the past. And what we do is we tend to use what is present as our law or the facts. And it doesn't mean that that's true. It just means the most recent thing that happened that was impacting you is what you accept as law. You accept as fact. You accept that as it should be. So that means that you could have had a really unhealthy relationship with someone, maybe even had a child with someone, and then whatever is most recent activity, that could be whether it was arguing, whether it was good times, whatever that present state is becomes the primary state or primary fact related to that person. So if you had, if you were in kind of in my situation today, if you had a good relationship where you were working through whatever the challenges were up until a certain point, it's what happens now that is the most pressing, the most present on your mind. And so because it's the most present on your mind, everything else that was done up to that now seems to be irrelevant. And so I know we have a lot of this with relationships, a lot of this with our kids. Again, that's one of the areas that I'm actually working through this day, because the relationship with my son's father leading up to it, it's been challenging. But at this point, because I didn't respond in a negative way. I always tried to maintain and have a positive outcome, even if I just had to hold my tongue. It was not about me. It was always about my son. So now, because I've taken that step, he has taken this position as if he's entitled to do whatever or act in whatever way he thinks is appropriate because I've been supportive and focused on our son and what's best for him, not coming out of an emotional state about it. And so I think that's where a lot of some of the drama, not just the trauma, but the drama starts to ensue. So how do we do that better? And so this last one is, which I think is also relevant, it's called a neurotic trend. And it's a theory based on a therapist named Karen Horney. And it is it's our anxiety and the things that cause us to have such anxiousness, and it makes us detach from our character. And as we are detaching from our character, we are also denying that we have this sense of a detachment. And so I know that's present with a lot of us, especially when you're confronted in a way that is challenging. It challenges your beliefs. It challenges your views. It challenges your ego and your identity. When those things come up, we have these neurotic episodes, and that is really being detached from reality. And I know, again, that's our emotions that are really driving us, and not our logic or reason. So just four things that I'm hoping that as people are seeing themselves in this conversation, that you can find yourself so that you can find your way in and you can find your way out into the solutions that we need.
Awesome. So, of course, when you introduce the neurotic trends, you're right, you're talking to the populace. They hopefully, they'll go look and do some research. But the fact that you went through those four things to extend an olive branch and understanding what are we doing wrong. One, we are actually practicing before the real game. Right? We're doing too much practicing and not entering the real game. And as I was sharing before, when you come from a single environment, you're very, very comfortable with yourself. You accept who and where you are and what you are, right? And so you're never in a hurry. Because again, that's what the economy was set up for. It's his economy and her economy. And if you are divided, economy-wise and family-wise, right, I can make that much more out of you. If you were together, right, and you were together, now I would have to find that someplace else. We were, yesterday when you were talking about the marketing, I said, you were looking at the different couples and the different type of couples and why you were watching market. I said, because they all have a demographic. But anything that will keep you from being with you. Right? So when you see that, whenever you see a black couple, it's the whole thing is around black. This is another hidden prejudice programming, the whole nine. So now you're going in a different way, right? So then when you see biracial, right, you see all this beautiful, right, everything is just peachy. Then the marketing, it continues, right, because you have these different cultures, so you have to advertise it's more. See, if it was just one culture, if it was just the white culture, right, they would just advertise to the white culture if it was left up to a bunch of people, right? But when you really get into what we're talking about, it is more feasible to everyone in business for me and you, me and her, to be apart than together. See, if we're together, there's a good chance we're going to have healthy children. And we're going to make sure that our children are healthy the whole night. Now, if we're together and we both college graduates and we're with our children, productive members of society. So what do? In that system, we teach some more separation and judgment. Right? So just like right now, big conversation is about all, Jay-Z and all these guys, right? And then I simply said to the brother, I said, he said, what do they have in common? I said, brother, what they have in common is when people hate on the LeBrons and all of those, they're telling you, right, that they're fulfilling what they have spoken. See, they've already said, we can't do it. And so because we've said we can't do it, with them doing it, we're still hating we got to find something wrong because we found comfort in the negativity of black. We found comfort. So in the negativity of black, we can say, oh man, I don't need them. See, I ain't, that's nothing. Oh man, so what right? Oh, you first black billionaire basketball player. He ain't Michael Jordan. See? Right? He ain't even better than, right? We spend our time tearing down instead of spending our time evaluating the greatness. How did you get there? You're not evaluating it, right? So the same for the families. What she just said about the percentages, that's on us as men. I've said this recently as Father's Day. What is wrong with our women is what is wrong with our men. We are not taking the hand of our women because we're out of order. She has way more resources than he has. So that automatically pits you against each other. When you see that she has these things that she can do. Take it even a step further. Last night, evaluating about the medical field, right? We're always in research mode. We're always looking for something. There's always something that is impacting the culture. So this thing, was about the medical field. But I watched this brother lay out this whole piece about how even on the deathbed, as black men, we want all the resources to the table to save. So do not resuscitate, DNR. We won't request it. But what they found is black women request DNR on their husbands way more. Astounding. The medical field has tons of resources for, the end of your life. Right? It's EOL, end of life segments for men and women. But what they found was that black man, right, he himself was treated way worse. And so if he was sick, and one guy even said his wife was getting ready to pull the plug the day before she had ordered the DNR, right? And the day before he woke up. And when he found out, he got out, divorced her, and went on with his life. Right? Incredible. But the other way around, he's fighting for her. It's just incredible. Because we point out and we highlight all these things that say we don't love black women. Right? We say that. But when you look at these dynamics, it don't add up. So I wanted to get into this because the smothering, the unmothering, the part that I want to make clear, as she was talking about, we have got to do a much better job as mothers with our boys. And we're doing pretty good with our daughters because they're going on to graduate, right? And they got to drive like you never seen before. But something is happening to the boys that we're very comfortable in saying that what's wrong with the boy is his daddy. But we know different. We know there are a number of statistics out there, 80% of all boys in the hands of women. We know that our boys don't leave their mother's side. We don't prepare our sons. We prepare our sons to stay, and we run our men off. We know that in this demographic, right, we will accept, back to the acceptable culture, we will accept the man and that we can control, that we can talk to, disrespect, right? And then across the board, we also will accept a good man. The problem is the in-between. What are we doing as mothers to raise our sons healthy? Do we have our sons in quality mentoring programs? Do we have our sons? Are our sons actually having access to the father, or is this an emotional beast off where he doesn't have access to his child? Is this a man fighting to get time to see and spend time and teach his child, or is this just a man, that wants to just talk? That's what he's gonna do. Or is this a man that doesn't really want to cooperate, and vice versa? Because we see it both ways. So is this a woman that doesn't want to cooperate with a man that's fighting to see his child? But when it comes to the boy, we hold that, and it was such a point that they miss with TD Jakes in the 20-second soundbite where they went at TD Jakes. What he said was such a powerful thing. He said what happens is that the woman sees that the man doesn't love her, so she takes his son and brings him in to make him part of the camp, and doesn't realize how moving him in to the camp is going to destroy him. And working with thousands of males, this is something that you see consistently. Right? So his point was, that was just one of the many powerful points that he made on Father's Day that everyone just blew by, because he said black women were becoming men, and he was right. You're doing things that your body is not supposed to do. And not saying you can't be successful, right? Because I'm big. I sit next to a woman, I cheer her on. But you are not to be angry. Your body cannot handle that. We have a considerable amount of women who are having hysterectomies, right? Cancer. You can't hold that anger. It's the same thing I said to at the Man-to-Man Youth Conference. You can't hold that racism. You're gonna keep holding that racism. It's just gonna keep eating you. You're gonna keep holding that hate towards somebody. It's just gonna keep eating you. God is serious about reaping what you sow. If you sow hate, it's going to eat you. So if you are just constantly denying you're going to sow something that you don't like. And that's kind of like what happened yesterday. Someone has sown a seed in this boy, in these boys' lives, that they're very comfortable with doing this damage. Mass shootings, drive-by shootings. They're very tired and very comfortable. Video gaming. But we know
it was designed for a training tool.
That's right.
And so you can't get away from the original. You can't get away from their original design. Just like man and woman by original divine design was to create and to have fruit come from the labor and the union of them together. So again, the order. That's a part of our disorder. We've somehow gotten away from the initial reason and role that we are here to fulfill in the earth. So I want to just step back a minute, because I want to talk to the moms and the women that are here and listening, and that will hear this in the future. One of the tools that I was given for us to be able to navigate this, and it was given to me first. There are 5 strongholds, and a stronghold is just a place where things are kept, and it's kept and it's held in force. So there are 5 strongholds that we have to overcome. We have to release these strongholds, because in today we are and need to be the anchors. And so when I say anchors, I mean that we have to be that support that holds it down. We have to be that support that helps to make sure things are moving in the right direction, but we're also part of that foundation. So anchors are normally anchored underneath, so you don't really see that. And I think that a lot of us as mothers even want the recognition for holding things down in the event that male presence isn't there. We want the recognition. We want our anchors to be on top. If your anchor is on the top, that means your ship is sailing. It's going in a different direction. It's in motion. But you need to sometimes be able to anchor down the values, anchor down your household, anchor. But it doesn't mean that you are a stronghold, because the strongholds actually go against the anchor. These are the 5 strongholds. The first one is control. And all of these are really fear-based methods that hold us from being and living the life that we're supposed to. So the first one is control. The second one is pride. The third one is abandonment. The fourth is rejection. And then the last one is distraction. We have to get a hold of these strongholds. We have to recognize what they are, what they're doing in us, and what we are using it outwardly as a tool. So we use those things outwardly. So we try to control our sons, right? Because one of the reasons that we have been designated as the anchor is because we're supposed to help the men to transcend and transform. But if we're holding them back and holding them down and holding our sons captive, many of our sons are more companions than they are our sons.
Ooh.
When we get to a point where we can't have a healthy relationship with some of the men in our lives, we transition that and put that attention to our sons. And we have to be careful. That's part of our smothering process. So we're trying to control our environment. We're trying to control their environment so we still have that connection to that male energy. The second thing that we're doing is that we have a sense of pride. So this pride thing works in multiple ways. One of the ways that we use this as a pride is because we use it as a banner of being a single mom. We use that as a banner. If you are in a position, one, you should never be a single mom. You should never be a single mom saying that there's no one else supporting you. If you don't have an internal support system, then you need to find an external one. So if you don't have the uncles, the grandfathers, the father, the stepfather, the godfather, if you don't have them, then you need to go into programming. You need to find mentors. You need to find healthy programs that have healthy male models. You have to put that information in books and movies that they're watching, and not the video games. It's a poor substitute. So there are a lot of learning games. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of learning and healthy games. We have to make sure that what's being seeded in their minds is something of good health and wellness and images of what men are and what they should be, not the negative ones. There's plenty of that information out. There's plenty of negative things to say if you can find negative things to say. So we want to make sure that our sense of pride is not just that we're waving a banner. So we want somebody to compliment us because we're doing it, or we think we're doing it alone. If you are, the next thing you need to do is get yourself a network of healthy men around that young man, because that is how he's going to become a man. If he's around you and we're raising him, we can only raise our own type, our own gender. We can only raise girls. So that means that the girl that is in our house is modeling our behavior. That's a whole nother dynamic, a conversation to have. So you want to make sure that your boys, if you want to raise a healthy man, then he has to have a healthy man to honor and to follow and to model. If he's under you, then we're only giving him healthy women or semi-healthy women to follow. But he's going to model the feminine and not the masculine. We can't raise our sons in the same way that we raise our daughters. Okay, and so the next one is abandonment. Feeling that somebody will never come back, that they'll never come back. And when you feel that way, you take a position, you take a defensive position. And so everything that comes after that event then has to be scrutinized through that lens of being abandoned. So it's harder to trust, it's harder to build trust, it's harder to be accepting. And then because we say that about males, we forget that there's a male in our household, that we're raising a boy, and we are taking the attitude that they don't understand or recognize what we're saying to men or about men. When you say it about other men, you're saying it about your own son. That is what he's internalizing. Even if he's not saying that, he could possibly be internalizing every negative feeling that you have about being abandoned by a male. Whether that's our fathers, whether that's our husbands, whether that's our boyfriends, whoever that male is in your life that you feel like has abandoned you, we have to be careful and mindful that we don't plant that seed into the boys in our households. That's not what they're taking in, that they're taking in a healthier attitude or approach. And in order to do that, we have to be pouring that out. The next one is rejection. Rejection is feeling unwanted. Unwanted. Like nobody wants me, or this person doesn't want me. And if this person doesn't want me, maybe the next person won't. And it's a cycle that closes women in. It closes us in to choose our sons as our companion because they can't go anywhere, right? I've done all of these things for you, so we tend to close our boys in and then make them our companions because we don't feel like they will ever reject us. And we make sure, and we put things in place to make sure that they never reject us. We make them feel obligated to us. That's why mama's boys don't leave home, because now we have put so much guilt and put so much on them that they tend to not want to leave home. And we hold our sons way too long. If your son is still with you and he's 32 and he can't even have a healthy relationship with a girlfriend because you're continuing to interject in that relationship, there are some things to consider about what strongholds you really need to make sure that you're addressing. And again, I'm not saying anything to you that I have not dealt with myself and I continue to deal with. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but I'm aware. And so I know that there are things that I have to work on to make sure it doesn't happen. And the final one is distraction. What are your distractions? Are you distracted by a physical need, and once you get your physical need or your attempt to get a physical need met, that takes you away from everything else you were trying to do? Does that take you? Is it that important to you to have somebody in your bed or somebody touching you that you can forget everything else that you've been pouring into yourself, your own area of self-love? Be very careful, be very mindful, because that physical attraction is very strong and it can be very distracting. So make sure that that's not the pull and pulling you away from your values, because that's huge. It's pulling you away from your core of what you believe. That's huge. It's pulling you away from the progress that you're making in your life and in your health. That's huge. Make sure that your distractions are not what's keeping you from becoming the best you can be. So that's being able to forgive. That's being able to heal. All of those things, being able to love yourself. You can be distracted really easily if you're not paying attention and giving intention to what you need to be healthy. That is loving you inside out. And it doesn't have to do with anybody else first. It has to do with you first.
Go ahead. Queen. Thank you, baby. Thank you. That is how you pay attention to need solutions. That is it right there. Everything you just ran through. I have been wanting to hear that, and I heard it today. Oh man, so beautiful, right? Because these are the things that she really do this work. See, people be like, oh well, yeah, okay. No, this is real work. That was real work. That's from experience. That's from helping women. And now listen, we're talking, that's from helping women for 25, 30 years, right? Not being valued or appreciated within her. That's over with, because we value her. We uplift her. We champion her because she is that voice. And more, we need more mothers to understand the part that they play in the demise right? As well as the success, but the demise of our boys. And we got to get out of that lane. We got to get out of that lane. We cannot continue that process. It is not healthy and it is not producing quality families. And that is what is impacting our culture. And my strongest opinion, what she just said, was to all the mothers and the women, right? You hold the anchor. You can control exactly what is happening. You can do that. You don't have to be out here. You don't have to be acceptance and going through these things alone. A man, you can't get a man to marry you. It's no question. I've seen it done on several. You can get a man to marry, but you got to carry yourself a certain way in order for him to be able to trust, so you can find out. Just like I said last week, you got these things, you don't, how you gonna get behind wall number one to rescue her, and when you get there, you on some bull. Oh, I didn't got over here, I see the little girl, and then you turn around and reject her, you're hurting her. And it's the same for you with him. You can't get a man and then he pouring into you and he's telling you what he's going through, and then now you took his pillow talk and his trust and his understanding to pour into you, and you on the phone dogging him to somebody else, and all the people laughing, and you think it's funny, and you talking about, and you done missed the whole boat of what a relationship was about. Once we find trust in someone, it's very, very difficult for us to abandon that person. That's why it's tough, right? Because you love them, you trust them, and you value what you shared with them. What she was just saying was powerful. And that's going to be, I'm telling you right now, I'm clipping that. Because that right there, that is everything that women need to hear. Women need to hear that. Women need to hear that. That's what we have to do as for families. First it was men, then it was family. Today it was moms and women. We got to get out of this lane, because the more you stay in that lane, the more early deaths we have. When I tell you the statistic that when a child has their father from birth to 9, the child lives longer. What would be in your mind not to make sure that the child has his father and her have their father in the early stages? That tells you everything about the cognitive, about the health, about the heart, the lungs. Man, this is such a powerful thing, but we get away because it's me, my, me, I.
But it also is anchored in our values. It's anchored in our core. Man. If we don't nurture our values, then all of these other things take hold. That's where the strongholds emerge from. It's because we're not anchored in our values and our beliefs. If 87% of black people have a religious affiliation, and the assumption of that affiliation is that there are some core values and beliefs that you have and that you share, regardless of what that religious practice is. The idea of a religion is to have something that you do routinely. And so if we're not practicing even what we say we believe, or we say we're a part of this particular religious group, if we're not practicing that, we're in trouble. Because you got to have something to anchor your values on.
That's a whole nother issue.
It's a whole nother. But it again, the focus is on what are your values? What are your beliefs? And we start to come out of those things when we start talking about acceptable culture. When it's acceptable for, certain behaviors to happen at home, and then that spills out into your community. It's acceptable behavior, then that is altering whatever your core values are, or changing what your core values are. And if those are changing, that means the distractions are easier to come. That means the rejection and the abandonment. That means the control issues are. If we look at those things from that lens, it can help us to administer our own solutions in our own lives.
Hey man, I ain't got nothing else to say, bro. Queen came through and shut it down. Flat out, right? But no, I really appreciate that. I'm glad you had that. It was nice to see you go. Let it all out.
We have to do some things differently.
We have to.
And today is a reset. So if you are looking and have expectations about what your tomorrow is going to look like, you got to start that today. You have to start today.
Well, one thing about today, you came in here on fire, and I gotta say, I gotta say, you know how this vibed out. Right, for mothers, and what I love about it was your honesty with your own situation. I think a lot of times what happened is that we're not willing to be, and this is something I've learned from you, we're not so willing to be honest with our situations, right? We like to put a jacket on it, then we're gonna put a bow tie on it, right? Then and then we're gonna put it in some plastic, and then, right, we're gonna do all of that instead of just going right with the truth and sharing, because once it's out, you never know what God blessing has for it. If you're holding it in, it's hard to get blessed. But when you put it out there, God can come right in and swoop that thing up and make it all happen and go away for you. That's why prayer and fasting and those things are so important to, like she said, ground, anchor your values. I'm speechless, Book, and I that very rarely happens that I'm speechless, right? But this being part 3, we address the mother, the children, the family, and the father, right? We'll end this segment on these 3 parts, but one thing that has to be clear, culturally, I'm challenging the African American culture. I'm going to challenge them that they put their families first. That we get to the place where we understand that our children must be raised as adults. And it's our job to raise adults so they are not babies. I'm going to place the emphasis on that because we have a tendency to say that this is my baby. Heather, tell them where they can get booked at.
You can reach out to yourinspiredjourney.com, which is our website. You can catch me on social media, or you can email me at heather@yourinspiredjourney.com. You can even pick up the phone and give me a call at 313-759-7855.
So we did this to put it in the books. We archived 3 parts about how important family is and the values that we need to get back to. Labor Day is coming, so we won't be here next Monday, but one thing's for sure, and I think we need to really take a look, and instead of just talking, there are several wins going on out there. There are several couples. We got some wins going on out there. But what we got to do is we got to do more as a family. We got to make sure, as she said, that the unit and unity comes together. I think it's just so important. If we value our children more than we do our house and our cars, we will somehow win. If we value ourselves, if we value the men, the fathers, and understand that, we somehow win, because without dads, all of the problems in the world are connected to the absence of him. So as she would say, he's both the problem and the answer. But we have to do a better job across the board on family. And I'm just going to say what I said the other day. A damaged child becomes a major broken adult. When we damage a child's childhood, we create monsters. We not only do we create monsters, we create more monsters because it's DNA marked. And the DNA is marked and then it's passed. So we got to do a better job of understanding that we have to do better at the beginning with our children. Literacy should not even be an issue for our children. Every child should be reading. And the fact that that is not the case means that we're creating even more. We're part of the violence that is being created because we lack the necessary tools to make sure that our children have just the basics. With that being said, my name is Calvin Mann. Hey, I can't say it enough. Happy holidays. Shout out to CNS Healthcare, Huntington Bank, Chase Bank for always being there for us. The Balmer Group. Looking forward to the RV. So that's something we're going to really get into in these next couple of weeks. But with that said, my name is Calvin Mann. I'm the president and founder of Encourage Me. I'm young. The Rose tore it up today, y'all. The Rose tore it up. Put your family first. Peace.